Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Prestige Global Meeting Sources Educational Webinar Series. My name is Sasha Andreev, and I'm going to be your host today as we explore today's topic, meetings and incentives at sea, from one of our valued Prestige partners, 3D Cruise Partners. Now, if you're new to our educational webinar series, welcome to you. Last month, we kicked off this webinar series with some great insight about how to understand your AV needs and budget. And we are so excited to continue this month with another topic aimed at the needs and requests from industry professionals like yourself. Now, as many of you know, we have been providing site selection and full event services since 1986. And our goal is to make your events the best they can be by tackling the challenging parts, from site selection and destination expertise to contract negotiations and conference management support. We do the research so you can focus on the bigger picture. And after years of fostering close relationships with hospitality partners around the globe, we are tapping into the vast array of resources they provide and passing that knowledge along to you in this monthly educational webinar series. And so I am very excited to dive into today's topic, meetings and incentives at sea. Now, as some of you may know, the cruise industry has evolved in a post-pandemic industry into one of the most sought-after destination selections today. And more clients are choosing to charter ships for meetings and incentives. And since there are so many great benefits to tap into, along with new ships, cruise lines, and options to consider, we brought in an expert to tell us a little bit more about it. So I want to bring onto the screen Karen Devine, who brings a wealth of knowledge with a combined buyer and supplier experience to the meeting and incentive marketplace, having worked in the incentive travel industry since 1982. And I want to spotlight her for everyone so everyone can see. Before I toss it to Karen, I just want to tell everybody a little bit about her because she has got a very impressive resume. She began her supplier career in worldwide sales for Four Seasons Region Hotels and Resorts. She's also worked for a leading DMC company as the director of marketing before representing the entire collection of luxury hotels and resorts for Rosewood Hotels and Resorts as regional director of sales. In 2000, Karen became the director of charter and incentive sales for Radisson Seven Seas, which is now known as Regent Seven Seas. And in 2004, she started 3D Cruise Partners, where she and her team bring instant cruise insider expertise to incentivize customers by providing immediate access and complete details for all cruise lines. So saying that Karen knows just a little bit about the travel industry would probably be an understatement. And I'm so excited to welcome her. Hello, Karen. Welcome to our webinar series.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here, although you just made me feel a bit old, but we'll get through that. No worries.
Oh, well, you don't look the history of your work certainly does not show. Before I toss it to you, can you tell me really quick, why are so many clients considering cruises as a destination for their events?
Well, thank you for asking. It's the golden question of the hour. Thrilled to talk about this today because, as you mentioned, coming through the pandemic with everything we went through, the cruise industry was already very, very popular. What's happened since is the evolution of more product, more destinations, more opportunities, and frankly, more opportunity relative to the meetings and incentive side of the industry with spaces confirmed and things like that. So I can't wait to dive into this today to give everybody really a complete education on why the cruise industry has evolved to the point that it has today.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to hear more about it. And before we do, I just want to give a note to everyone watching this morning. If you've got a question for Karen during the presentation, there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and that is where you can type in your questions during the presentation, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can after Karen has completed her PowerPoint. And also remember that this presentation will be recorded and then made available for viewing on the Prestige YouTube channel. So you always can go back and sort of revisit some of the talking points. Loving that you're all here. We have so many of you joining. And Karen, don't get too nervous because that number of attendees keeps ticking up. So I will check in with you at the end, but I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you again, everybody, for taking the time. I'm so grateful to Prestige for giving me the opportunity. Proud to be a partner and so excited to talk about the cruise world with you all today. So just very quickly, together with Prestige, we are literally an indispensable resource for you. What I want to really focus on today is the education of the cruise industry and how we play such an important role for you, because you don't need to know everything there is about cruise. That's my job and my team's job and our job together with you as a partner. But what I want you to know as we go into this is we are a completely unbiased resource. And what that means for you is we listen to your specs, we dive into that, and we find the best possible solutions for any given set of specs without being married to any given cruise line. So again, it's listening to you and what you need. And if there is a cruise opportunity that fits your specs, we will let you know that. But what we will never do is try to, as I put it, square peg, round hole it in letting you know or trying to give you a cruise opportunity if there isn't one. I'd like to think there's one for everybody these days, and we'll dive into that a little bit more now. But just know that as we go into the different cruise options, my hope today is that you take away something that you didn't know. Whether you know a lot about the cruise industry or very little, I hope you walk away with more information than you came in, because there's a lot to talk about in so many different aspects of cruising. So what do we do? Today is a great example of the education of the industry. I'm so proud to be one of the people that talk about it often. I've been given a wonderful platform to do so from an educational perspective. And again, today with Prestige, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk to you about very specific information that I hope you walk away going, oh my goodness gracious, I didn't know that. I want to think about a cruise for this or that meeting or incentive program going forward. So the education part of it is one part. The sourcing part clearly is the next. We're listening to your specs and then moving on to finding you the right product. 3D's collective buy translates directly to you, the customer. So everything we do and the vast amount of cruise that we're responsible for, we leverage that expertise into best practices, best terms and conditions, best pricing, best everything. So I'm very, very proud of that with all the years in the cruise industry and being able to leverage that on behalf of the customers. And then the execution part of that is super important as well, because we stay with you from start to finish, all the way through, from the initial request all the way through the final bill. So just a very quick overview of that. Now, some of you might be laughing about this slide, but it's my favorite, or one of them anyway. And I think everybody in our industry really gets the image of this, which is people really just see here what's on the surface. There is so much going on beneath the surface, and that's our role to help you. Understanding the nuances, understanding where the ships go, understanding the terms and conditions and how and why they're different, and being able to explain that, knowing maritime law, being able to explain those differences and how that translates from a hotel contract, frankly, over to a cruise contract. So often I tell people I'm not an attorney, but I play one on TV, because I'm always explaining the terms, the conditions, the nuances, and why they're different. So I do talk to risk, I do talk to counsel, and do everything I can to help make that language much more clear and understandable as we work through. So what we're going to dive into next is a whole new world of cruise experiences. And while this may look like a very simple photo or image in front of you, it's so true. Is thinking about cruise is not just the ship anymore. It's not just where is it going. It's the combination of the two that develop the whole experience, because that's what we do collectively as an industry. The experience of a meeting or an incentive or any type of program is all about your venue and where you are. What I'm working on now as I educate the industry is trying to marry those two. So people think about the cruise ship, depending on which one it may be, actually can be part of the destination. I'll go into that more in a moment, but certainly combined the two and where the ships can take you and your choice now of different lengths of cruise. Where are they? Do they stay overnight? How many ports of call do they have? Do they have meeting space? Collectively becomes an entire experience that we want to focus on a little bit more. So I'm going to spend a minute on this image because this is literally the entire cruise industry, or most of it anyway, right here. And I smile often with my friends at Prestige and I say, you know what? You guys are responsible for the entire world of hotel. And I can ask almost all of you, tell me what hotel you would go to in whatever far-reaching corner it may be, and instantly it's knowledge. But if somebody asks about a ship, there's this sudden look of, I'm not sure. So what we're trying to do with this is break this down to make it very, very simple, not relative to destination, which I'll talk about in a moment, but relative to product. So as you hopefully can see there, what we've done is taken, and you heard in my bio, I'm a former luxury hotel salesperson for many, many years. So I'm a former Four Seasons girl. So I always talk about it from that perspective of there are your floating Four Seasons, or literally now your floating Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton and Orient Express coming and so forth. So the luxury side of the cruise industry parallels directly to the luxury side of the hotel industry. So those ships listed there are what we would call your floating luxury hotels. The next level is premium and boutique, which I put together, where premiums are your JWs or your high-end Westons, perhaps your boutiques are your Kimptons, for example, which I think, again, resonates quickly with identifying when I come back to you, like, again, nobody needs to know what cruise product. If you can tell me what hotel product typically fits for any given program, we can immediately associate you to the right cruise product. It's that simple for us as we associate the two. Moving on, these are your big Gaylord or big Marriott resort hotels is the contemporary space. That's your big floating resort hotels. Stopping there for just a moment, so many people think about, oh my goodness, I'm not sure if I want to cruise. I don't know if I want to be on that big of a ship. I'm not sure what to do. And that's no offense whatsoever to our large cruise partners, because they are phenomenal, and they also cross over to luxury, which I'll explain in a moment. But we want people to understand there's an entire world of cruises out there, from 30 or 50 cabins all the way up to lots and lots of cabins, and literally everything in between. So again, going back for us and looking at your specs and asking the right questions to make sure that we find you the right ship product to meet the need of that particular program is really, really important. And then finally, I put river cruise in a bucket by itself because it's wildly popular. It was pre-COVID. It is, again, European river cruise in particular. And why? Why is it so popular? Because it's a little boutique hotel floating down a river. You're in a little port of call or a big capital city such as a Budapest or Vienna. Every other day you're somewhere new. The same thing on the ocean side. You're waking up potentially in a new country every day. River cruise has become so popular because it takes you to all these European capitals and small European cities floating down the river one by one. The biggest challenge that we have on river is the size of the vessels, because they're roughly around 80 cabins. So how do we answer that? Tandems. We've now done 2 ships together, 3 ships together, 2 ships starting in opposite locations and crisscrossing, meeting in the middle. There is so much flexibility with it to increase the capacity. So that's why we put it in a separate bucket by itself. Going back one second before I move on is the parallel I made a moment ago to why can big ship also become premium or luxury? It's because some of these larger ships have a ship within a ship, which you may have heard of, in an all-suite enclave, key card access only, their own pool, their own restaurant. But you might have a group that wants that luxury aspect, but they want all the bells and whistles of a larger ship with the huge Broadway-style shows and all of the entertainment and all of the restaurants. So again, the point is, when we're looking at an option for you, we're going to examine all sides of whatever the program may be to ensure we come back to you with exactly everything that we can think of, perhaps in and out of the box, that could fit that particular program need. So moving on, I am very proud to be a board member of the IRF, the Incentive Research Foundation. This is not an advertisement of the IRF. Rather, it's something I want you all to know if you're not familiar. It is an area you can go to, a website you can visit for free research on all kinds of different topics, travel and non-travel related, specifically focused on the research of the incentive industry. The reason I point this slide out is I became a member of this organization back in 2021. And at that time, post-pandemic, or just actually coming out of it, as we all remember, they do all kinds of surveys. And at the time, they did a survey in 2022 that was based on 2021 research of participant request for travel. At that time, cruise came in dead last. Makes sense with everything that we came out of. 1 year later, in 2022, we did the same survey. The Research Foundation did the same survey. The 2023 results, I'm sorry, I said 2022, I meant 2023 results came out, and cruise rose to number 3. That is indicative of just how fast the cruise industry came back after everything that it went through back in 2020 and 2021. This is a lot of text, and I know you'll have this recorded and see it later, but the point of this was, then in 2024, a survey of participants, and you'll see it here, there was a 36% increase in the guest request for cruises. So the point was, the appeal went up that much in guests saying they would or wanted to or would consider or would enjoy going on a cruise. So that's just a little bit of the research. I'm going to go now forward to where we are. So new cruise lines, new ships, all kinds of things happening. What I also wanted to do is go backwards just slightly, because even during what we went through a few years back, ships were delivering. Even with all the negative press on the cruise industry, ships continued to deliver. At the time, I believe there were 16 ships that came out in 2020, 21 or so that came out in 2021 and 2, more coming, as you can see. And fast forwarding that, where we are right now is 70 more still on the new ship order book through 2028 or so. So these ships keep coming, they keep building. We have new cruise lines, Four Seasons is building, Ritz-Carlton has now delivered. There's all kinds of new deployment, because as these ships develop around the globe, they're looking for new and different places to visit. So that leads us to all kinds of new opportunity relative to the destinations that they go to. So that's just a quick snapshot of how quickly the cruise industry has developed. This is just a quick look at what I wanted to share. And I guess, I'm sorry, that slide was a bit out of order. I apologize, but this was the 16 ships I mentioned a moment ago. So we have these small, beautiful little yacht style cruise ships, all the way up to big, new, beautiful Royal Caribbean and NCL and Carnival cruise ships, and literally everything in between. There's so much product that has come out, is continuing to come out, is still under construction and coming out for foreseeable future. And as you can see represented by some of the images here, they are all different sizes, all different levels, going back to that image I showed you a little while ago of the different buckets of the cruise industry. Literally every single segment of it is building. So there's our 70 plus new coming. I just threw at the bottom there a 23, 24, 25, 26, again, just to give you an idea of what is yet to come. So we're super excited about what has happened in the cruise industry, all of the different product. So sometimes, you know, as we go into the next phase of education of the cruise industry, it's the why cruise or why not. The why of cruise is, in my world, very evident, but just to make it clearer, hopefully for you all, is it's very comparable, or most comparable, I should say, to an all-inclusive hotel. So cruising is, or can be, all-inclusive. You're always buying in US dollars. It is a guaranteed bottom line budget. Depending on the cruise option, you have a la carte things you can add or not, depending on what your budget allows. And again, that's our job, is to let you know what you can add, what can you do, how much does it cost, so that you can put together that bottom line budget and figure out if that cruise is a fit. I'm going to go into the activities and so forth in a moment, but there is so much more available now on ships than there ever was before. Two of the things I want to focus on are the increased flexibility relative to dining and activities on board, how meeting space is contracted. I'll get into more specifics of that in just a moment. And also I want to talk about safety and security. Very, very important. You cannot just walk onto a cruise ship. The security of your group, your team, your folks is parallel to none, because you have to be cleared to get on a ship. You have to be cleared through local authorities or Homeland Security if it's in the US. So it's a very secure environment, and we're very proud of that because it doesn't matter which type of ship you're on or where you are in the world. That is true wherever you go. So relative to budget and cost, the two probably biggest factors of advantage of cruise pricing is your meeting and function space, and audiovisual is included. There is no fee for AV, meeting room rental, or function space. That in and of itself is a huge cost factor savings when we look at cruises. Also important to know is that ships, many of them now have dedicated conference centers, dedicated meeting space, dedicated theaters and lounges that we can put in a contract. Also with the AV, if you think about some of the bigger ships in particular, the huge Broadway productions that they do, all of the lighting and the sound and the green room, the booth, all of it is ours to use, and it costs absolutely nothing. So it really does, and it doesn't matter what ship you're on, there's not a cost for that. So it doesn't matter, what type of meeting or function or reception or dinner. What we can look at is so varied now because of all of the different spaces that the cruise lines are now allowing us to put in contract. So you have that dedicated space to look for. So moving on to what there is to do. Now, a lot of this is representative of some of the bigger ships, right? So my gosh, you can see it here, but everything from zip lining to there's a walking the plank kind of situation on one of them to skydiving to surfing. There's so much. And again, that's focusing on some of the bigger ships, but know that these different events on those ships, we can also do for team building. We can take them over. Or on some of the smaller ships, something as intimate as a wine pairing or a chef's table or a chef's kitchen. So many different things, whatever the ship offers, we can make available for a group. And I haven't differentiated yet the difference between group and charter, which I will in a couple of minutes, but that opens up yet a whole nother world of what we can do based on the activities offered on any given ship. So going on to dining, and this is a little bit more indicative of charter, but I'll separate group to that in just a moment. A lot of people, I'm happy to say, chartering of cruise ships is back. Why? Because it's yours. It's your ship. Where do you want to go with it? How do you want to customize it? Design and decor can be brought on board. I always smile with this part and say, whoever walks into a hotel ballroom and says, thank you very much for the white linens and, no decor, nobody typically, but on cruise ships, we used to do it for years. Now we do have these big, beautiful venues and we can customize them. We can put decor and florals and all kinds of different things in them and theme them married to the destination that we're in, very similar to the way you would do in a hotel. So this is just a quick representation of that. In that on the left side where you see the red chairs, that's a regular, beautiful grand dining room on a large cruise ship. We had a event company come in and do literally just as simple as linens and florals and some candles and completely change over the way that dining room looks, as you can see. The picture on the right is something very simple. It's a small dining room on a smaller cruise ship where our client took over. It was 50 guests. And they took over that restaurant. And again, simple as changing over florals and linens, and boom, we have a customized, themed, beautiful venue. And that we can do now on all kinds of ships. Again, doesn't matter if it's group or charter, we can use an event company just like you would on location anywhere in a venue, and bring in that decor, the theming, the branding, whatever it is you may want, and of course, whatever the budget may allow, to ensure you've got that customized experience on board. So this is my fun little slide of how do you find it, where and when, and know that it's in budget. That's what we're here for. It's as simple as a text or a phone call or a quick email, and we can very quickly listen to what you're looking for and identify, yes, there is something we can look at here. Yes, there is something that would fit. And we can give you information at least to be able to go back into that strategy session and have a conversation about what may work, and then examine it later if somebody agrees to do that. I think that, sometimes when you're sitting in a room of where are we going to go next year or the year after, what we're trying to do is get cruise to be a thought up front because of all this new product, because of the flexibility, because of the knowledge I hope you walk away today with, and understanding, oh my goodness, there are so many products out there that we might look at. And now we can go to our partners at Prestige and talk about what are we going to do? How can we do it? Where can we go with it? So again, our job is to help you see that very clearly, our job is to protect you and have your back with every single part of a cruise experience that you might be looking for. So my goal with all of this is, again, as I started early in it, is look at it as a whole new approach to cruising. It isn't just the ship. It isn't just the destination. It's the two together. We can certainly bring the destination on board with theming and decor and design in your events, as we've talked about. We can certainly take you off the ship. You can use your local DMC to do something customized. You don't have to use the cruise line. You can if you want to. There's all kinds of conversations around that as well. The walkaway I hope you have is tremendous flexibility, incredible options at every level, just as you would look at a hotel for a destination. So what I'm trying to walk away with, or have you walk away with, is reimagine your cruise experience. Think of it differently. Maybe you hadn't thought about it as a venue to take you to various locations around the globe. Maybe you didn't realize that some of these cruise ships now are doing 3-night and 4-night and 5-night, for example, because we all know 7-night cruising isn't an everyday conversation necessarily. So what is available in that short cruise market? Is it something that we can look at? Meetings at sea. We have had great success with the team here in doing some absolute huge events on ships that did not require them to be chartered. So again, flexibility on some of the larger ships with the dedicated meeting space and what they can offer you. So I hope that that provides you with a very quick, and I'm sorry, I know I talk rather quickly, but a good overview going through the cruise industry, what is out there now, what's available to you. I hope that there are questions, and even if the questions aren't today, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here and I'm happy to help anytime you need me. So thank you so much for the time. I'm grateful. And I will flip it back to Sasha and see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was such a great presentation. I love how swift it is. And there were some really great questions that came in. So Karen, I'd love for you to actually stay on camera with me. And I'm going to add you to our screen so we can do that. And then also stop sharing your screen with us so that way we can see your wonderful face. There we go. All right, so here's the first question. It actually came from Ashley Care in our chat. What if folks wanted to do a buyout for the Four Seasons cruise, and since it only holds 95 suites, is that something that's possible?
It is most definitely possible. As a matter of fact, I met with them at IMEX last year. We can 100% buy out that ship. It will take a pretty impressive budget to do so, but it doesn't matter what cruise product we've talked about today, including the Four Seasons, they can all be 100% yes.
Awesome. Next question that comes from Bethany. She asked two really good ones. But she would love to hear more about a rooming list. So do they work with your team to meet room needs, such as connecting rooms, ADA, upgraded rooms, etc.?
Yes, so in the cruise world, it's called a manifest, which is the same as a rooming list. And yes, it's very similar to what you would collect for a rooming list. We know in advance how many accessible rooms are there, what connects, what doesn't, how many are triples, how many are quads, and so forth. And we submit all of that to the cruise line. And actually, at the time of contract, the rooms are pulled so that if we know that in advance, we can already pull the different kinds of rooms that are needed. But the answer is yes, easy to do.
And also, how far in advance can you book or sign a contract? Could one say sign something for the year 2030?
Oh boy, well, you got me on that one. 2030 might be a little tricky. Right now, we are looking at 27 and 28, but that's about as far as we can go in getting a hard quote right now, unless it is one of the major cruise lines. And I'll use Royal Caribbean as an example because meetings we know can be booked much further in advance. My best answer to that is we'd have to base it on some assumptions of what would remain, for example, in that 3- and 4-night market, which is typically where the meetings go. But knowing that ships like that are going to be in that market consistently, I'd have to look, to be honest, I'd have to look and see how far in advance they would be willing to guarantee a price for us.
Got it. Yeah. Paige Adams was also asking the same question. It feels like it used to be a challenge for their organization to book in advance. So we'll certainly put up some info of how to get in touch with you in a second. So obviously that can be a follow-up. Gabby Kopke asks, what are some of the typical concessions you see cruise lines offering big groups? Great question.
Let me first say, Gabby, thank you for the question and thank you for the interest in cruise. I know we've been working with you and Anna on a very specific program, so I'm grateful for that. The concessions on cruise are pretty aggressive. It depends on the cruise line, but you have a very aggressive TC, which is tour conductor or comp credit, if you will. Some of them provide master account credits. Some of them provide site credits. Many of them provide complimentary receptions. At least one, if not more, depending on the length of the cruise. Some of them provide amenities. All of them collectively provide something. It just depends on which cruise line and the level of cruise as to what, but all of them provide very aggressive amenity concessions. But I also want to very, very quickly highlight the terms and conditions of cruise are very aggressive in the client's favor, particularly for group, not as much on full ship charter, but when you're looking at a group, which is most looking at group business on a cruise ship, the terms and conditions, specifically attrition and cancellation, are incredibly aggressive in favor of the client.
Got it. Here's a question that we actually talked about when we met before this even started, because I think we all had this on our end here at Prestige, is can you talk about how many cruise lines have full Starlink capabilities? Wi-Fi is a common concern with clients, and when you're in the middle of the sea, connectivity sometimes feels dubious. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and my answer to that is actually going to be, I'm not quite sure which ships don't have Starlink at this point. So very happy to say almost all of them do. Having said that, at the end of the day, Starlink is satellite, right? So depending on the satellite link, I mean, I will tell you flat out, my job is to travel the globe on cruise ships. It's tough, but somebody has to do it. And I'm working all the time. So most of the time, it's excellent. Do we have occasions where if it's, I don't know, bad weather or something, the satellite is not as clear as it should be, then maybe, because it's always going to be a satellite connection on ship. But Starlink has been a game changer for the cruise industry for sure.
Awesome. Can you speak to this question from Susan Wagner? How many breakout rooms are typically on a ship?
That depends. So it depends on if we're using the conference center. I'll use, again, Royal Caribbean as an example because they have a dedicated conference center that splits into 3 separate rooms. However, sometimes we'll do the meeting in the main theater, and then we use the conference center and maybe a lounge and a specialty restaurant as breakouts. So it just depends, and I'm sorry, it's not just a black and white answer. It depends on what the need is of the client, how many breakouts they need. Can we use the general session room as one of them? That's something we look at on the specs, and we will very clearly identify what can be used as breakout, because at the end of the day, that's going to then be up to the customer if it works for them in assigning those different, maybe not quite as a normal breakout session. If we're using dining rooms, for example, that are only open at night, is that okay? Because it would be private space. So assigning those and making sure the client knows what is possible based on their needs so they can decide if it works for them or not.
And obviously, the selection of the cruise based on the needs is going to really impact sort of maybe which line they choose. And that leads me also into a follow-up from Bethany. Is it possible to do a site visit on a cruise ship so you can figure out some?
Great question. I'm sorry if I forgot to address that. Yes, most clients, when they're looking at a cruise opportunity, will do what's called a day visit. So anywhere in the world, we can go visit a cruise ship for the day. We always recommend it's on a turn day. What does that mean? That's the ship comes in the morning, disembarks the guests, cleans, refuels, puts all the new food and beverage on board, takes off that night with a brand new set of guests. That day, that stretch of time from 8 to 10 hours is ours to use for what's called a day visit. We get on the ship just after it clears customs in the morning in any given port of call in the world. We look at cabins first because guests are not yet in them. So client can see the cabins that they're looking at to contract. They visit all of the meeting and function space. We set up meetings with AV, production, food and beverage, whomever it is. Usually there's lunch on board so they can get just a taste of the F&B, and then we're off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a perfect way. And then once they contract, or if they contract, we can set up then what's clearly called a sailing site, because oftentimes they'll want to get on board the ship and actually sail what they've purchased. So both are possible.
Got it. All right, another question. And by the way, if you have questions remaining, we still have a couple of minutes, so feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. I see some folks raising their hands, but we'll want to see you type out that question in the Q&A section. So, really quick, are there US-based cruises for 350 people as a total buyout?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are there US-based cruises that would be a total buyout for about 350 people for that size?
Yeah, so 175 cabins. The answer is yes, depending on season. And the reason I say that is, and I should have mentioned this when I went through that slide of all the breakdown of the cruise industry, typically the luxury ships follow the weather. So it just depends on when. So those ships, which are the smaller ships, that run from 50 cabins or so up to about 450 cabins or so, those including about 175, 200 cabins, which would be 350 guests or more. Those ships are typically in the Caribbean in the winter months, and then they move on to the Mediterranean or Alaska. So it can be seasonal with that size vessel, but the answer is maybe.
Got it. And the follow-up on that, no, not 175 cabins. I would need 350 cabins,
Yeah.
not double occupancy.
Yes, the answer is yes. It's going to depend on the seasonality, because the ships are going to run 350 is in that luxury space. So it's just going to depend on when as to where it is.
Got it. And then like a hotel, would 10 rooms cabins be considered a group?
It would be, and in some cases 8 is considered a group.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. And is it possible to customize cruise room cards with your company branding?
Cruise room cards.
You know, like the way you would like sort of.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, your key card. I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Absolutely. And we do it all the time for charter. For group, we might have to get a little bit more creative with it, but the answer is yes.
All right. And then here's a question, a little more personal from Abby. What is the most memorable cruise you've ever done?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's a trick question. Probably Tahiti. I'll just be honest.
And what was memorable about that? Why that particular one?
Oh my gosh. It was a bucket list for me. And seeing the islands of Tahiti by water, which again, okay, I'm a cruise girl, I get it, but it's spectacular every single place you go. And there was lots of time off the ship, lots of time to explore the destination, which I probably should say this again. I think I said it when we were chatting during the presentation, but that's another very important thing is destination immersion, to coin a phrase at actually a specific cruise line, is becoming more and more prevalent. People want to spend time in port. So in Tahiti, the overwater bungalow, for example, is something everybody knows about, and people have the opportunity to get off the ship and do that because the ship is staying overnight in port. So it just depends on where you are and where you're going. But I think Tahiti will always go down in history for me.
Got it.
That was.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. All right, and Gabby has a follow-up. Does 3D Cruises help with booking airline travel if the group is booking an international group cruise?
We do not. And I will also tell you that, we don't have an air department, and I will also tell you that there are a lot of good options out there. We have relationships with people for group air ticketing. I do not. And this is, again, where my job is in protection of you, the customer, not in protection of the cruise line. But most of our group departments with the cruise lines would highly agree with me, if not all of them. Air Sea is not a great option for group. I can dive into that another time or with anybody specifically that has the question, but you can buy air through a proper group air company better than you can buy Air Sea through a cruise line.
Got it. And is it possible to not stop on shore and just do a 3-day tour off-site?
At sea the whole time?
I'm assuming that is the question. Yeah, is it possible to not stop on shore and just do a 3-day tour offsite, which I assume is just stay at sea the whole time?
It actually is if you're not sailing out of the United States. There are all kinds of laws that are called cabotage laws. That goes into the maritime thing a bit. From the United States, we have to hit a foreign port of call. There's a lot of reasons for that I can dive into specifically with anybody who wants to know that later. But internationally, yes, We can sail from certain countries, be at sea only. Some countries, we are also required, like the US, to hit a foreign port of call. So, for example, we can't sail round trip Rome without going to France or to Greece or somewhere. But we can sail round trip Athens without going to anywhere else. So it just depends on the country. A bit of a long answer, but it depends on the country. It is possible.
Got it. Well, Jeff's laptop says Jeff Prestige has a wonderful air team and they book all the time. So that's where Prestige kind of comes in to help out with that. And I actually want to bring up a little bit of information because if you do want to get in touch with Karen and her team at 3D Cruises, contact your Prestige account manager. They're going to be the ones to help you connect and also give you other resources if need be for what you need for your events. If you have further questions and comments, obviously, you can also reach out to Prestige. And of course, they'll put you in touch with Karen or anybody else that we work with here. Karen, you have been such a fantastic resource. Thank you so much. This was so informative. And I kind of, I'm a little jealous of your job. I would love to do a few site visits myself.
Well, now you have a friend in cruise, so reach out anytime. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. And of course, like I said, reach out to your Prestige account manager if you want to get in touch with Karen. And if you are loving these webinars, I want to remind you that on October 24th, we are going to do another one called Hold Space for Me, Wellbeing for Event Planners, which will be presented by Nicole White, who's the managing partner of Rock and Roll Team Building. It will be at the same time. And of course, if you've got ideas for a webinar that you would love to see, that you have a hankering of learning a certain subject that will make your life a lot easier and your work easier, please feel free to reach out to your Prestige account managers as well. They'll pass that along to us as well as any other questions that you may have. So until October 24th, I want to thank you all for joining us. This has been such a wonderful webinar. Remember, you can check this out on YouTube later on, so make sure to like and subscribe the Prestige YouTube channel. And I will see you next time. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day.